Hey, what's up, Jeepers? I promised you guys a wiring video, so let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. Jeep Psychology 101, Jeep Wiring 101. Now, I'm not going to lie, Jeep peeps. This video is going to be long, it's technical, it's involved, there's a lot of very important information in it. I'll try to break it up so that you're not completely bored to tears or your brain doesn't explode. So sit down, grab yourself a cold drink, focus, and we'll dig in. We'll try to guide you through the process of putting a V8 in one of these things. The very first place to start is with your recipient vehicle, because you're going to need to know exactly how your dashboard communicates. So your very first step in this process, and I've discussed this in 2 earlier videos, is to get yourself a Daimler Chrysler factory service manual. The Daimler Chrysler part is extremely important, because if you're going to get information, go directly to the source. They designed it, they built it, they provided all the service support to all the dealerships nationwide. This is what you want. Now, there are digital copies available, but you need to make sure it is Daimler Chrysler. Now, the first place you're going to want to start is with the book for this vehicle, for your recipient vehicle. And the very, very first thing, once you get that book, is go to your pinouts and your pinout chart. Look up pins 27, 28, 29, and 30, and they will spell out whether it is CCD or SCI. And if there are any other funky ones like 2004 Rubicons that have a more sophisticated computer, you'll be able to find out that information there. Just follow your diagram, follow your additional notes that will have symbols telling you which pinouts are used with which vehicles. And if there's something that takes multiple pinouts or multiple Molex plugs, you can identify them, locate them on your vehicle, and you can determine, like, if it's an early or a late run, and get an idea which PCM you're going to need for a donor. Okay, let's start off with some Daimler Chrysler wiring diagram basics. Some things you need to know when you open up your Daimler Chrysler factory service manual and you look at it. What you're going to see is that all of your diagrams, battery positive, is going to be near the top of the page. Okay? Everything flows down from there. So if you've got a component here that's battery positive, and you pass through a component that's represented as partial, it'll be illustrated with a dotted line. There will be lines that go through and give your terminal number on your device, and it will flow through to the next device, whether it's a relay or a switch or a junction block. If it's a complete item, it will not be represented as the shape of the item. It will be represented with a box with that device in it. If it's a relay, it would have the relay symbols in it, and everything will always be illustrated in a state of at rest with the battery disconnected. So that's going to be a little bit of a clue as to, when you're looking at something, what condition it's in. Okay, so then, as I say, your battery negative, say this flows into the PCM, which is represented in its complete form, but they will only give a couple of terminals on it. They will never list all of them. Say it's like B23, and then down here you will have the corresponding that goes to Earth, battery negative. Let's take a look at some sample Chrysler diagrams. Okay, first off, as I explained, diagrams are arranged with battery positive at the top side of the page. If you look at this example here, you're going to see part of your ignition switch, where it's start, run, and off. That's an ignition constant. Start and run, that is only while it's cranking and while the engine is running. Okay, and you'll see a pin number here, A81 and A21. Where you'll find those wire numbers are on this junction block, which will be labeled as 8W12-2, and it will be similarly labeled on the vehicle. Now, that is your fuse box. Some of this stuff you're not going to need to be concerned with, because a lot of this is going to be pre-existing in your recipient vehicle, and you won't be transferring this from your donor vehicle unless it's like a really extreme case and you're transferring the entire wire harness and the dashboard. But we're kind of staying clear of that right now. We're just kind of getting through the basics here. You'll see some of these have a little arrow coming off of them. That indicates that the circuit doesn't just feed down this line, that it goes to another line. You see that here on the constant hot, you see that here on the switched hot. Okay, you come down here to the brake warning lamp, you see that it branches again and it feeds to a different circuit. Now, standard symbols are used, and there's a page I'll get to that covers those standard symbols. You know, here we're looking at the brake warning lamp on the instrument cluster. Basically, that's a light bulb. Okay, now you're thinking, why is it hooked to a constant hot? Well, if you follow this on down, you go through a connector, you go through a junction block, and you follow it on down to the anti-lock brake controller, where it ties into terminal number 18, which this is shown as a dotted line, so they're not showing you the whole thing, and they're not showing you even its shape or anything like that. That's not the purpose of this. You should have a pretty good knowledge of the vehicle, and if not, you can Google it, you can look it up, you can see you can get pictures of it and see what it looks like. And through that, then it would pass to ground. So basically, this is a cold side switch. Constant hot to the lamp, you apply a ground or a neutral. Well, it's not a neutral, it's not AC wiring, it's DC wiring. And it would then ground and complete the circuit, turning on the light bulb. Now, here you'll see a dotted line between three wires. This is an important one as well. This is going to indicate that these three wires are located within the same connector. That's an important thing to know. Anytime you see one of these little arrows here pointing downward and a symbol for a wire taking off, that indicates that it's from another page but is within the same group. So there's going to be another piece of equipment, and you're going to be flipping back and forth page to page. I'll kind of get you guys an idea, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Let's take a look at this sample over here. Once again, you've got a constant hot. It passes through the fuse block. It branches. So it's fused, but that fuse feeds multiple components. It comes down here to the instrument cluster, which again is not shown in its entirety. It's in a dotted line. And you've got an oil pressure warning lamp and a brake warning lamp that are both powered by that constant hot. From that instrument cluster, they leave the instrument cluster and they pass through a connector. This C110 is a connector. And it passes down here to the oil pressure sending unit. This is a simple one. It's basically a light, an idiot light. And you see a relay, symbol for a relay. Solid box indicates that that is shown complete. So that is the entire component. Then from there, it indicates, this little symbol right here indicates that it is case grounded. That means that screws into the engine block, and the engine block is the ground. Okay, let's follow a different line here. Let's take this brake warning lamp, and it drops down and it comes through another junction block, but this junction block is shown in its entirety. This is strictly a sample. It splits, and that same wire, which turns on your brake warning lamp, goes through your park brake switch, which is case grounded, so the body of the switch bolts directly to the frame and is grounded. There's not a wire coming off of it. And then it also, through this same junction block, feeds down through to the brake fluid level switch on your master cylinder, and that is a relay. It's shown at rest in its normal state, not making contact. If you were low on fluid, it would be connected over here and would pass through, and you see here that it's a black wire Z1, and it goes to a body ground. Anytime you see this G, it indicates that there's a body ground. And the point of reference is given where it's attached to the body. Is this making any sense at all? Okay, let's skip ahead here. Now, you're going to run into wire colors. At Chrysler, as long as you are using a Daimler Chrysler factory service manual, it is going to give you all of the wire colors. Now this happens to be the Dakota. This is where we get into the V8. It's going to give you all of the colors of your donor vehicle wiring harness. BL is blue. Standard tracer color would be white. Some of them have no tracers. Some of them are solid. BK is black. Standard tracer would be a white. BR is brown, or there's a brown with a white. And it comes right on down. You can follow along. You can see what it does. And there are wires with tracers. There are wires that do not have tracers. These are the letters that indicate this wire's function within the circuit. A would be a battery feed, that would be a battery positive. B is brake control. C is climate control. D is diagnostics. E is going to be dimming illumination circuits. F is fused. G is monitoring circuits, gauges. H is open. I is not used. J is open, powertrain control modules. K, anything with the letter K is going to go to your powertrain control module. Interior lighting, and there's some of these that you're not going to need. Okay, now let's kind of familiarize ourselves with the book. Your chapters, everything is going to have, like in the wiring, is going to have an 8W on it. And there's different, right now we're in 8W01, which is general information and diagrams. And we're going to be skipping through a lot of this charging system, and we will get into powertrain systems, because that's where you're going to find the bulk of your powertrain control module terminations. This is an important one. Connector pinouts. Okay, that's going to give you more information than you can imagine. Your connector locations, including grounds. This will be helpful on your manual for your recipient vehicle. It's not going to mean much on the donor vehicle, because obviously that's going to be out of the pickup, Jeep, Grand Cherokee, Dodge Journey, whatever, Dodge Ram, Dodge Dakota, whatever your donor vehicle happens to be. You're going to need a lot of this information in powertrain systems and connector pinouts. Grounding locations not so important. You're going to be using that on your recipient vehicle. And some of it you're going to have to just make up, because it's not going to match. Okay, symbols. Obviously, some of these are universal, used throughout the world. Batteries, generators, inline connectors, fusible links, fuses, circuit breakers, multiple wire connectors, and they're going to be labeled as a connector and the corresponding number. Female connectors, male connectors, hot bar. About the only place you're going to find that is inside the fuse block. And we'll get into that in a later video because there's some cool things you can do with the fuse block. Gang switches, open switches, closed switches, sliding contacts. You're not going to be using a lot of that, but resistors, potentiometers, all these things are there for a reason. You're not going to use a lot of them, especially on a vehicle that is, multi-port fuel injected and everything's controlled by the computer. Most of your diodes and those kind of things are going to be contained within the PCM. Okay, and while we're skipping through here, this is a page that's really important. These connector tools. Now, Daimler Chrysler is good enough to list the tools required for the different types of connectors. For general purposes, I refer to all of them as Molex connectors. That's technically not true. You will have a combination of Molex connectors and Thomas & Betts connectors. Your Thomas & Betts connectors are typically your ones that are completely water resistant. Those would be more on your PCM. You'll see lots of them throughout the build. And there are going to be places where you have to move pins around. So I would highly recommend you get this special tool 6934 for removing these Thomas & Betts wires out of the connectors so without damaging them, so you can reposition them in other spots. Also, this tool 6742 for the Molex is really important. You can get on Amazon, eBay, a cheap set of multiple, it's got like 64 different wire release tools. They cost about 10 bucks. They're not real expensive, but that's also an option because if you go to your local Snap-on truck and try to pick one of these up, it's going to take the money to send your kids to college. Okay, let's kind of skip forward and we're going to skip the soldering and stuff like that. I'll do that in another video. And I do strongly suggest that all your terminations be soldered and heat shrunk. And we're going to skip right through and get into some of the good stuff here. Okay, the page I just happened to open to is for the 4.7 liter California engine, which the difference is it has multiple oxygen sensors on the exhaust. It's got a left and a right, upstream and downstream. So it's got a total of 4 O2 sensors on it, where your typical non-California has just 2. And I've got a little correction to make on myself. This page is except California, this page is California. If you're in California, you're going to need to follow this. Or if you're in a state that has adopted these crazy smog rules and is demanding California compliance. Okay, so let's just follow this circuit real quick. So we got a 30 amp fuse in the fuse box. Okay, and it's going to pass through your automatic shutdown relay. Now, it doesn't matter what Jeep you've got. As long as it has fuel injectors, it's going to have an automatic shutdown relay, because that shutdown relay is going to kill power to the injectors to cause the vehicle to shut off when you turn the key off. So we're passing through this automatic shutdown relay, which is located in your fuse box, and you're going to locate wire A142 in your fuse box, and that's going to be where you pick that up. And it's going to pass through a joint connector that is no longer going to be there. You're going to ignore that. And where it's going to go to is it's going to come out to your engine compartment, and it is going to provide power to your injectors, all 8 of them. It's going to provide power to your coils, and on your 4.7 liter engine, there are 2 of these capacitors, and it's going to supply power to both of those. They do have to be there, so don't omit them. They're going to bolt right to one of your injector studs that holds your injector, or I'm sorry, not your injector, your coil. It's going to bolt right onto one of those that holds a coil in place. And as you can see, this powers injector 1, injector 3, coil unplug 1, coil unplug 3, coil unplug 5, and then here it says S181, and this power wire also continues to A on another page. So you're going to turn the page and you're going to find S181, where it's continued from the previous page. Same over here on the California edition. You're going to find that S181 continues. Okay, so we're going to follow it down, and you can see that it splits again, and it goes and powers fuel injector 5, fuel injector 7, 8, coil 7, powertrain control module. It also feeds your powertrain control module. Your coil wires take a power wire, and then it's also going to take a negative, and it's going to take a signal wire from the power control module. You'll see that later on as we go here. And you see that wire continues through and goes to S182. And also down here to S183. So you're going to make a lot of Y splices, and I'll do a video and show how you do those and do them so that they'll be watertight, and so that you will never have to worry about a butt splice pulling apart on the trail, because that's important. You want something that's going to be strong, it's going to be water resistant, you're going to want it to be watertight and nothing that's going to come apart. Crimp connectors fail. Don't trust crimps on something like this. Solder, heat shrink. If you have to, get some junk wire, get some solder, get a soldering iron. I'll walk you through that. Okay, but not in this video. Now, if we look at our S182 and S183, we're going to turn the page, and we are looking for S182 and S183. If you don't find it immediately on the next page, flip back. At some point there should be a reference as to what page you're going to find it on. And if not, you can go back to the references in the front of the section, and it will tell you every page that you will find these numbers on. And you can navigate your way to the pages that way. And we're still in power distribution. Okay. You're not going to need a lot of this, because a lot of this is going to be ignition switch, and it's going to be something that you don't really need. You won't really need it. This is the page I was referring to. This page is going to list all of your different components. Let's just go down to powertrain control module, right down here. And you'll find that it appears in chapter 8-30, pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 29, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. Why they put 29 out of sequence? I think just to confuse. Okay, so let's just take a quick trip through here and see what we're looking at with the powertrain control module. Now this is important. Your powertrain control module generates different voltages, different signals. You're going to have circuits on here that are 12 volt DC. You're going to have circuits on here that are 5 volt DC. You're going to have circuits on here that are 4 to 20 milliamp, and you are going to have data. Okay, so it's real important. Do not just start applying 12 volts to wires without understanding what they are and what their function is. And it's all laid out in here. There's no guesswork. All the information is right here, but not necessarily on this page, but within this chapter. Because if you do apply 12 volts DC to something that is 4 to 20 milliamp, you're quite possibly going to smoke your PCM and whatever device is at the other end, probably a throttle position sensor. Anything 4 to 20 milliamp is going to measure position. It does that by the amount of milliamps between 4 and 20. Okay, so that's important to know. Don't just start applying 12 volts to a powertrain control module. Now you can see on here, powertrain control module, powertrain control module, powertrain control module, and all the things that go through it. You know, we've got, on here, we've got your inputs, your fused and your switched ignition, and they're going to be in your C1 on the Dodge. It's going to be your A1 on the Jeep, especially if you're dealing with a 1998 Jeep Wrangler. I can't speak for all of them, but you're going to need to make sure that you've got this correct. And this is why I strongly suggest you get a factory service manual for your recipient and a factory service manual for your donor. And I know it's a lot of books and I know it's a lot of reading, but trust me, you get done, you'll have something that'll fire up on the first try. And you can see, skipping back to this is your fused ignition switch output. This is start and run. This one is battery constant. Both of them can pass through fuses in the fuse box. Both of them are probably already in your Thomas & Betts connector that plugs into your PCM. These are ones that are already there on your recipient vehicle. Okay, and you see down here, you've got your powertrain control module, and you've got your, this duty cycle evap purge that goes to your evap canister, and you've got your fuel pump relay control. It sends a signal, basically through a transistor, that when you turn your ignition switch on, you know, this is a start and run, does not run an accessory, sends power down through your connector, don't worry about, to your fuel pump relay that is inside your fuse box. It already exists, and then goes back to your fuel pump, or to your PCM, and it provides a negative which passes power across the coil of the relay, locking the relay in, turning on the fuel pump. Your fuel pump does run on a battery constant. Your switch takes place over here on your relay. So you're going to have a constant hot to this relay, also in the fuse box. This is one component. And it passes through to your fuel pump. That's going to already be on your recipient vehicle. But in an earlier video, that's where I explained that you have to save that engine transmission wiring harness, because you're going to need to pull that part out of it in a TJ or a YJ. It's intertwined with the engine wiring harness. So you're going to need to keep those and separate those out. We're looking at like a fuel gauge here, okay? This is going to pass through. Okay, now we have an automatic shutdown relay, also already in your fuse box. You can see here your start run and your battery. It's powered through battery, and your automatic shutdown relay control on C3, which would be A3 on the Jeep, C3 on the Dodge, activates the relay, kills the power to the ignition coils and to the injectors. Okay, now we're on a 4.7 here. This is continued from 8W30, page 5. So it's skip back, 8W30, we gotta go back a ways. 8W30, no, just one page. 8W30, page 5, okay, right here. It's a dark green with orange, and it's going to supply power. It's coming from the power distribution center, and it labels it as such in power distribution center. It's going to pass over, it's going to come down, and it's going to come back over to here, S181, and it's from C106 over here, and you can see that it feeds across, feeds your 12 volts positive to coil 1, coil 2, coil 3, coil 4, coil 5, 6, 7, and 8. And it comes then down to the powertrain controller module, which provides a negative. Okay? So that's going to complete the circuit every time the reluctor wheel says piston 1 is at top dead center. In the firing position, it's going to close this, it's going to fire the coil, lighting the spark plug, continuing the burn cycle. Okay, so you see how this works. So you're going to have off of this wire a minimum of 8 branches, but we're not done. There's more than that. This S182 continues over, and it also powers the fuel injectors, but we're going to have to skip a couple pages because Daimler Chrysler, God love them, 4.7, 4-banger. Okay, so we got to switch page, we got to keep flipping pages until we get to the 4.7. Now we're going to pick up that same wire from C106, S181, and it's going to power all 8 of your fuel injectors. Okay, and it's actually, they were good enough here to continue it on this page. There's your capacitor on the opposite bank. We spoke about that earlier. And that's also going to go to your automatic shutdown relay trigger. Okay, and it's going to feed all of your injectors so that when you shut off the ignition, this kills power to your injectors. But it initially draws its power from S181. And S181 then becomes S182 over here, which shuts down all of your injectors. And of course you've got oxygen sensors. These you're not going to worry about until you're a little farther along. You're going to get into the build because you need an exhaust system before you do that. And here again, we're back at the 2.5, 3.9, 5.9, and so we're going to have to find the 4.7. 4.7 except California. Okay, are y'all kind of getting the idea? This is going to take a lot of flipping back and forth. You need to get one of these manuals, you need to study it, because this is all of the information that you need. This one, and the matching manual for your recipient Jeep. And you can make any V8 within certain parameters work. You just have to maintain a power control module that will communicate with your dashboard. Now here's part that brings up a point. Let's skip back to the pinouts. And that page has been open enough, it should just fall to it. pinouts. Okay, and as you can see, they provide all of the pinouts. Here's the important ones. These are powertrain control module. Now these are very much the same on lots and lots of models. Now there are going to be some models. This is where in the earlier video I stressed that you get a manual for your recipient vehicle and you look up your pinouts, because that's going to be your key. Okay, we're going to skip this one because this is a 2.5. We're not concerned with that. We're looking at a 4.7 in this particular video. You'll see this one covers the V6, the 4.7, and the 5.9. Okay, you've got subnotes here that shows which pin does what for what engine application. And you've got automatic transmission, you've got a 4.7 liter, you've got a 4.7 liter California, 4.7, and then with 2 dots is going to be 3.9 and 5.9. Those are going to be your magnums and your V6, which I believe the V6 in this particular year was also a magnum. Okay. And then again, here we throw in another 2.5. But here's the important part of this. Okay, this one we're looking at is mostly engine control. You know, there's a little bit of transmission, park neutral, switch position, but mostly you're going to see coil on plug number 1 driver. Now, if it doesn't have any indication, that's going to apply to every one of these engines. If you see a single triangle, that's going to be on your 4.7. Okay, so that's the coil on plug number 8 driver. Obviously on the V6 you wouldn't have a coil number 8. But let me skip to the one where you can really identify. Before I do that, you see here we have a 5-volt supply. That's going to supply a lot of your sensors. And that is in one of the plugs that goes to the engine. Okay, so your PCM is going to put out 5 volts positive, and then you're going to have signal wires that operate on 5 volts. There again, that's why I say know what each wire does. And each one of these pins on the back side of the connector has a very faint little number. And this one will be 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32. Middle rows 12 through 21. Bottom rows 1 through 11. They are numbered. Magnifying glasses, a jeweler's loupe, make sure that you're on the right wire. Correspond that with the color chart over here, because it will give you the color, you know, tan, light green, black with a white trace, etc., etc. Okay, let's skip over here to powertrain control module C3, which on your Jeep will be labeled C1. They're just numbers on the page. They go in the same position on the powertrain control module. These are the important ones right down here. 28, 29, 30, well 27, 28, 29, and 30. You're going to have an SCI transmit and SCI receive. You're going to have a CCD bus negative and a CCD bus positive. That is where you determine that this particular Jeep is CCD from your recipient vehicle powertrain control module plug that has these as transmit, receive, and bus negative and bus positive. If you are not CCD, 28 will be the only one used. 30 will be blank. And it will have an SCI in there. There you're into a digital realm. The PCM is sending a signal that can be read on one wire. All it is a signal, I/O, 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 series of open and closed signals. And those are going to be on newer models. I think that we have filmed enough for one night. Well, if you made it to the end of the video without falling asleep or having your head explode, thanks for watching. And please, if you found this information helpful, like, share, and subscribe. Help us grow the channel out so that we can continue to bring you useful content so you can build the wiring harness in your TJ. Thanks again.